Imagine you were buying a car and you were already pretty certain, I'm going to buy the Toyota. I'm just going to call them. I'm going to make an appointment to come in and test drive it. Cool. They don't call you back. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to call Nissan? Maybe, but you're certainly going to think less about Toyota. Gyms who are chasing this goal of having 300 members are telling themselves, I'll start paying myself when we get to 200 members. I mean, it's just a flawed model. It's probably not going to happen, and you shouldn't base your family's income on it. This is a collection of truth from mostly the micro gyms, but the fitness industry as a whole, so that gym owners have something to start from when they're making decisions.
Hello and welcome to this very special episode of Gym World Worldwide. Joined with me, as always, is my co-host, Mateo Lopez, wearing a Kilo shirt and a Kilo hat, double branded, tie-dye and camouflage. So, he can go anywhere. He's very versatile and just blends into the environment. But it's not about him today. It is about our special guest here to talk about the state of the fitness industry. We have my dad, Chris Cooper.
Hey, guys.
How's it going, the North Pole?
It's going great. I think every politician could take a lesson from the way Teo's dressed. You appeal to everyone.
Oh, wow. Appreciate that, Chris.
Yeah, man. Tie-dye and camo together. That's the magic bullet.
There it is.
You heard it here. Vote Teo 2028. So we've had you on before to talk about this guide right here. The big one, the mammoth that we put out every year at the twobrainbusiness.com website. What is this? What is the state of the industry?
This is a collection of truth from mostly the micro gyms, but the fitness industry as a whole, so that gym owners have something to start from when they're making decisions. It's really, really easy when you're online in a Facebook group and, everybody's kind of posturing a little bit and nobody wants to look bad. And you say, like, what is your average membership? And somebody will be like, I got 300. And it's just like the old days when we were comparing bench presses at the old Globo gyms. Everybody inflates their number a little bit. And so when gym owners are making decisions, sometimes it's really hard to suss out like what's actually true and who is just kind of overstating their case. And so when I was fixing my gym in 2008, 2009, I thought like it would be really helpful to know what the right number is here, what I should be aiming for, what the average is. And in 2018, when the opportunity came up to create this guide, we kind of seized it, and we've been doing it at Two Brain ever since. And
throughout the years, the guide has gotten smaller. So it started out as, I think it was like the first one was over 100 pages.
It was, yeah.
And throughout the years, you've strategically decided to cut out some stuff and also cut out some of the sample set. Can you talk the reason behind that? Like, why would you want a smaller guide when you can provide more data?
I appreciate it because I don't really know how to read. So there's a lot of more pictures in the guide, which I think is helpful for me, and less words. So I appreciated this shift.
Thanks, John. And thanks to you, especially Teo.
And you're illiterate.
Your charm. Your charm, yeah. So the data size has gotten smaller and the guide has gotten more concise in an attempt to make it more helpful. The first few years that we put it out, we were just like, let's put every piece of data in here that we can find. So it was more of a reference guide. And what we found is that like what we gained in scope, we lost in focus. And so in having all these different data points, every little number that any gym owner would ever want to know, we kind of lost the ability to be prescriptive and clearly say, you should do this. And now in the 2024 edition, we've got such a great history with this guide that we can say, here's where the trends are going. Here's what you should do. Here's where you should already be. And we're able to put that in a much simpler, easier to understand form. And in so doing, we actually did shrink our data set on purpose. Like some parts of our data sample increased. We did a bigger survey this year with over 1,000 gyms. We drew from, of course, the 1,000 gyms within Two Brain. And we also focused highly on our partnership with Wodify and Kilo GLM, because that's just where the best data comes from. And when you're trying to draw conclusions that affect the outcome of somebody's life, you want to have good, clean data that's not murky. So, while I do appreciate the contributions of past partners on this. Wodify's data is amazing. It's clean. It's simple to understand. It aligns with exactly what we're trying to show people. And when you want to have the best marketing data in the world, Kilo GLM has that, so instead of going with like the most this year, we really focused on the best, and we were very intentional about that.
Kilo also has the best vibes and the best merch, but that Clearly isn't reflected in the guide. But just want to point that out here. So to Chris's point, we tried to make it. When I say we, I have a very light hand. It is Chris and Mike Workington, the guy behind the scenes, pulling the all-nighters to get this done. I just get to go and parade it around with Chris. So I got the easiest job of the three.
Literally, thanks, Mike. Yeah, all-nighters for sure.
So we try to make it really simple. It's like, here's revenue. This is the training type: big group, small group, one-on-one. This is what's bad. This is what's okay. This is what's good. And we tried to be as clear as we could in terms of the information we were going to get and where you could mine it from. And so rather than scrolling through the guide, we're going to tell you how you can get a copy of it later in the show. I figured we would try and get really tactical. Right. I think we would build out what it looks like to have a healthy gym. And I think we should assume for the purpose of the show that most of the people listening will derive a good amount of their revenue, probably the majority, from group training. So while we do collect data on big group, small group, one-on-one, and then like big box or other, I think for this, we'll use big group numbers. And if there's any huge discrepancy in the data, Chris, between big group and small group, feel free to call that out. So, I'm sure at membership pricing, we can talk about some key differences there. And I'm sure Teo will have questions about, the differences between the two models. But, let's use big group as the North Star here, since that is the majority of Two Brain gyms. So I have a handy little cheat sheet here for you listeners. If you're listening to this is probably a good one to put on YouTube, just so you can see we have like an actual spreadsheet, and we're just going to fill this out and build a really good gym using data rather than guessing or using what he said, she said, or a ChatGPT written blog post, which is where a lot of people are getting data now and how everyone got data before this. So top line, the number, the sexy number that people like to parade around, revenue. Let's talk about it. What is average for a group training gym?
So by big group, we're saying that like the majority of your clients go into a group program like CrossFit or, HIIT, Fit Body Bootcamp, F45. CrossFit is very strongly represented in our sample. And the average that we're looking at is between $11,500 a month and $23.99 a month for revenue.
11,500 on the low end, and the middle, you said 23,500?
23.9. Yeah. So
900.
Close to 24. Yeah.
What do you think, Teo? Does that sound normal, high, low to you?
Sounds average.
Yeah. Based off of, we just looked at Kilo data yesterday. So yeah, that our average would fall within this average. So checks out. All right. And then
independent verification. I love it.
And then what's good?
Well, good for big box for big group gyms is 24,000 plus per month. So, what's interesting is like, these are coaching businesses. So that number might actually sound small to a lot of coaching businesses. But if you look at the sample size of well over, 9,000 gyms, anything above $24,000 a month in revenue is outperforming the majority.
And when we say like above average, does that mean that puts you at like, what percentage is that? That's the top 25%, the top 1%. What are we, how do we break this down?
Well, we use a mean calculation in this one. So what we do is just break this up by segments. So you're in the top 25%, the 25th percentile, if you're earning more than $24,000 a month in revenue.
Yeah. So you're in the top quarter of gym owners.
Top quarter of all gyms. Yeah.
Okay. And then one should assume that if they're making under $11,500 a month, they're in the bottom 25%.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that average is a fairly big span, but we've got a huge sample size here. And so the vast majority, like 50% of all people, are falling within that range somewhere.
And so for people who are in super expensive urban markets, that are listening to this, so, a lot of listeners in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, California, those numbers are going to sound ridiculously low. So for, more affluent, expensive markets, what should they multiply these numbers by to get kind of a good North Star?
Well, it's tough to tell because the picture is really incomplete when you're just looking at revenue alone. The reality is that somebody in Jersey, is running gyms with 2,000 square feet and doing over $1 million a year. And then there are also people who are running gyms at, 10,000 square feet and making this much revenue and like losing money. So I think if you're in a top tier market, you should probably be multiplying this by 2.5 to 3x.
That sounds.
Would you guys agree with that? I mean, you guys live in tier one cities.
I would have guessed 2.
Yeah,
would have been my number. And then if you're like in downtown Manhattan or San Francisco or something, 2.5.
Yeah. It'd be fun someday to be able to segment the data out like that. We just can't because we really prize anonymity. And so, we're not sure where each of these gyms are.
Can I ask a question about revenue?
Yeah, man.
There was a page on the report and it broke out where does the revenue come from. The majority is from, overwhelming majority is from like memberships and punch cards. Yeah. And so on the pie charts, it was just a tiny sliver for like merchandise and retail. So is it even worth it to spend time, effort, energy on that category? Is the juice worth the squeeze? I know John has had people on this podcast where they're making a lot of money in retail. But I recently talked to Hari over at CrossFit NYC, and he's like, I just stopped selling shirts, and it's the best thing I've ever done for my gym. So, funny. Where do we stand?
I mean, the percentages range depending on where you are in the world. But if I'm looking at US, for example, I think something like 2.9% would come, 1.8% would actually come from other stuff. Merchandise, okay, here we go. 4.2% is going to come from merchandise retail. The problem with that is that, depending on how much retail you do in merch, your cost of goods sold, your expenses, your inventory is going to be a big cut of that. So while it might account for 4 or 5% of your gross revenue, the actual profit on that number is quite a bit different. And especially if you're bringing in a lot of inventory, you're stacking up t-shirts like I'm sure Harry would have had to do. You've got a big wall of protein bottles or whatever. You might actually be underwater some months, losing money on retail. The best thing that the gyms can do, especially if they're a big group gym, is really focus on their core service, which is going to be a group program, of course. They're going to have a one-on-one program, especially an on-ramp, but a one-on-one option for people who want to contribute or continue with that. And, that's going to be 90% of their total monthly gym revenue just between those two things. The other 10% you can probably split up between if they have a nutrition program or a kids program or retail, or there's a few other things in here too. Drop-ins in some cases.
Yeah. And these pie charts where it's all 90+% of the revenue, this is coming directly from Wodify. So you have to assume it's going to skew very heavily towards CrossFit gyms where it is not, if you're not running a two-brain type model, you may not even offer personal training or nutrition or these other things.
That's true. Yeah. The average two-brain gym would basically have a 3-tier model where about 80% of the revenue is coming from group, maybe 15% is coming from PT, and 5% from some, third tier program like nutrition or kids or retail.
I mean, we have Eric Chang, an episode coming out this week with him, and he's doing over $1 million in a CrossFit gym, but he makes over 50% of his revenue from small group and personal training. So, 150 members, over $1 million in top line. Can be done, folks. Can be done, and you can still do CrossFit. It
can be done, and if you look at any of the top CrossFit gyms in the world by revenue or by profit, that's exactly what they're doing. But if you don't look at them or you don't know who they are, then you don't know how to actually measure their success. And so you might measure their success by how many members they have or how long the gym has been around, even if it's gone through 2 or 3 owners. And that's part of the reason that we wanted to actually collect this data, was to say who actually is the best, who should we be following as a good model.
So let's talk about members. Yeah. When Teo and I started, that was the only number that mattered. That was the only financial metric that you would ask another gym owners. How many members you got? And the bigger the number, the richer you were. And we know that to be true today after working with thousands of gym owners, that is the only number that matters. So what is average?
122 is the median number of clients. So there are outliers on both ends. Honestly, like there are people with 300 or 400 clients, especially in Middle Eastern Europe. There are people with 25 clients, and these are independent of revenue. Like some of these gyms with 40 clients are doing just as much revenue as the gyms that have 300. So again, we have to look at each of these to get the whole picture. But the average is 122. And this is why we commonly say that gyms who are chasing this goal of having 300 members are telling themselves, I'll start paying myself when we get to 200 members. I mean, it's just a flawed model. It's probably not going to happen, and you shouldn't base your family's income on it.
And so what puts you in the top 25%?
If you have 151 clients, you are in the top 25% of gyms. And I think that's a reflection on a lot of things. Like at that point, you've pretty much, what works to get good, more clients in the door, right? Like you're not guessing anymore. You're not jumping from fad to fad. You've probably got like at least 2 of 3 or maybe even 4 consistent like marketing funnels going. Your systems, your ops are consistent enough to keep people. Like you don't have one coach who's amazing and 5 part-timers who are mediocre. Like everybody is good on the staff. Everybody's delivering a consistent experience. At that point, clients are not finding a reason to quit. That said, most gyms are not there. They're between 96 and 150 gyms with like a mean average of 122.
So in talking about members, you mentioned marketing as well there before. Something I thought was interesting on the report was small group gyms are getting almost the same amount of leads as the large group ones. I think it was like 12 versus 14, not a huge delta in my opinion. And if a lot of the large group gyms are CrossFit gyms, my question is how valuable is that name or in your marketing efforts and driving more lead growth? And then another question is why is there not that big of a difference in the two models when it comes to leads?
Well, it's not a big difference because it's the definition of leads. So a small group gym won't have as many clients. Those clients will be paying a lot more, but they'll still get the same number of people coming in the door because from the outside looking in, people are attracted to your message, but not your model yet. They don't know what your model is. So they're attracted to your message, whatever that is. Look great, feel great, lose weight, whatever. They come in the door, they tell you the problem they want to solve, and then you present your model. We do this in a group. We do this one-on-one. We do this in a small private group, whatever. And at that point, the lead might convert and they might not. So the conversion rate between the two might be different. We'll see that probably in a moment, but the same number of people are coming through the door for both. I do think you make a really important point though, Teo, because a lot of people think like, if I switch to small group, nobody's interested in that. They're not going to come in. That's not true. People don't know what small group is. They don't know what big group is. They're going to come in and listen to your conversation about their goals.
Another thing to point out here is there's such a large difference between the mean and median. Why do you think that is?
Well, because the reality is like there are a few gyms who are absolutely crushing it with lead gen. Maybe they're using an advanced system like GLM, or they have like a really good website. But most people are not. And those top performing gyms that, top 25%, they're pulling up the mean average. And that's why I wanted to display median and mean here. Like if you're not getting 35 leads per month in your big group gym, there is something that you can do. If you're closer to the median, if you're getting about 14, you just have to ask yourself, like, why is there such a difference between the top performing gyms and me? And that's a solvable problem. Maybe you don't have a marketing funnel set up, or maybe you're relying solely on social media, or maybe you've got all 4 marketing funnels set up, but you're not doing a great job at any of them. Or maybe you're not talking to these leads, you're not nurturing them, whatever. But there's a massive delta. And I think, the key thing that we can take away from this chart is the opportunity that there are gyms out there who do not have secret knowledge. This knowledge is not like hidden from anybody, who are getting 3 times as many leads as everybody else. And it's just because they're learning how to do it and applying it.
Speaking of secret knowledge, something else I thought was pretty surprising in the report was I think you wrote, so when leads are coming in, still many gyms, a good chunk of gyms, are not calling their leads at all.
Yeah,
and I feel like I feel like a fool because every time I'm asked to speak at a gym owner conference or talk or summit, I'm saying the same thing over and over. It's like, yeah, call your leads. You got to call them quickly. And I'm like, well, no one wants to hear that anymore. I've said it 10,000 times for the last 3 years, 4 years, but I guess people still aren't listening.
Well, I don't know. Maybe they're just dazzled by,
Sure.
your charm.
Could be. Yeah.
But whatever it is, they're not going out and doing it. And this was a shock to me that 14% of people are not calling leads back at all. And when that happens, you're sending a message, right? It's basically like somebody's tapping you on the shoulder in line at Starbucks and you're literally turning away and pretending you don't see them. Like that's how they're going to take that message. If they're reaching out to you, it's because they're meekly asking you for a date and you're snubbing them if you don't respond. It's wild. No action has a consequence.
So what we can summarize is regardless of your model, you're probably going to get a pretty similar amount of leads. So whether you offer a large group, small group, personal training, the data shows that it's pretty similar. So if you're afraid of pivoting from one model to another, it's not going to affect lead flow. Universally, regardless of what type of gym owner you are, you will probably have you will respond the same to leads regardless of what model you are offering. So about a quarter of people just aren't going to call them or get back to them whenever feels good to them. About, a third of them are going to do it same day. So, maybe 6 to 12 hours later, and then the top half is going to be doing it relatively quickly.
Yeah.
So just by responding to leads in under 3 hours, that puts you in the top half of gym owners in terms of sales skill.
Yeah, I mean, imagine you were buying a car and you were already pretty certain, I'm going to buy the Toyota. I'm looking at my wife's car out the window here. I'm just going to call them. I'm going to make an appointment to come in and test drive it. Cool. They don't call you back. What are you going to do? Are you going to call Nissan? Maybe, but you're certainly going to think less about Toyota, right? You might call back one time, but that really doesn't happen in a gym because everybody needs cars and nobody thinks they need a gym. So, I mean, this is really important. And if you take nothing else away from the guide, we wanted to make this bold and loud and clear so that, do this, fix this one thing if you only fix one thing.
So before we talk about close rate and net new client growth, I want to talk about membership pricing. So if you are, let me pull up my trusty chart again. So if you're an average group training gym, what's your price?
So the average big group training price is $177 a month. Now that is going to be their most expensive group training package because that's what we asked them for. We didn't want the average. We didn't want people to ballpark. We wanted them to just say here's my most expensive price. What's interesting is that's about a third of a small group training price, and the delivery is really about the same. $477 a month is the average small group training price. $177 a month is the average big group training price. It's still probably too low.
And what puts you in the good in terms of your pricing?
Well, in the good, in terms of your most expensive price is $188 and above. Now that's actually pretty close to the average because there are so many gyms right at that $165 to $175 a month for their highest level package. Maybe that's their unlimited. That actually skews the results quite a bit. It's almost standardized that if you've got an unlimited pricing at your gym between $150 and $175, that's kind of where everybody is, especially in the CrossFit space. If you're below that, then you need to catch up. I mean, my unlimited rate in 2008 was $135, and it's been 16 years since then. That was my first CrossFit gym, and a lot of people are still not exceeding that amount. Part of it is a failure to distinguish yourself from all the other CrossFits or all the other small franchises that are in your area. And that's what this commodity pricing problem has become. And I can remember, years ago, somebody calling me from Atlanta and saying it's impossible to charge more than $79 a month in Atlanta. But meanwhile, you look around and you see like Rick Thompson and Brandon Brigham and, Miles Davis, and they're all like over 200 a month. Well, if they're both selling CrossFit, why is there such a disparity? And the disparity is that they stand out as like exemplary delivery. They have a no sweat intro. They keep clients around. They have expert coaches. They have amazing facilities. The problem is that like there's very few in that bucket. And that's why 188 and up is kind of like the top 25%. The top 5% would be significantly far and away higher than everybody else.
And we'll be able to show that with ARM, right? So what does ARM stand for? What is it?
Average revenue per member. So this is a reflection of like a member's value to you. Your value to them is that you're providing life-changing coaching. Their value to you is what they're giving you in return for that. And ARM is mostly driven by like your membership price if you're in a big group gym, plus your secondary service, which is probably going to be personal training, and then plus your third service, if that's retail, if that's nutrition coaching, kids coaching, whatever. It's really like the average value of a client. So what usually pulls that up is, I'm going to offer people a one-on-one option. So they're still going to do CrossFit. They're still going to do HIIT. They're still going to do whatever this boot camp is, but they're going to do it one-on-one with me. Those people pay for the privilege of appointment flexibility, of high accountability, of privacy. They just want to be with you. And maybe that's 10% of your clients, but they pull the average revenue per member up. And not only are you doing a disservice if you don't offer this, but you're also like harming your business by turning people away who don't want to exercise in a group. But that's largely what affects ARM.
So what's the average for a group training gym?
The average ARM for a group training gym is like 114 to 188. Now that's very close to the average membership price because most group training gyms only sell group training, period. They might have a little bit of retail, like I'm going to buy some Killcliff. Is Killcliff still a thing?
I don't know. I mean, who's to say?
Yeah, that's how long I've been a CrossFit gym. Anyway, you put your dollar in the jar and you take a thing out of the fridge and you leave, and that drives your ARM up a tiny little bit. But this is where Two Brain gyms are wildly overrepresented because the ARM of a Two Brain gym is almost double the industry average. So, the top 25% in our survey, their ARM is like 190. The average Two Brain gym is like way higher, 215 and up.
So for the average gym, it's lower than their most expensive membership because they have 2 times a week. Maybe they have discounts.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't offer. Yeah. We saw that 90% of the revenue is going to come from group training, so it's going to skew lower. A good gym will actually skew higher because maybe they do a couple personal training sessions before they onboard someone. They have a couple people on personal training packages. They're running up retail, stuff like that. And that's going to cause it to be above their most expensive membership option. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, man, actually, you made a super good point there, John. And that is that while people will tell us like our average most expensive membership is this, they sometimes forget the actual toll that like the discounts and the downsells are taking. And so when they actually figure out their ARM, they figure out, whoa, my average client is actually only paying $114 a month. Even though my prices are all higher than that, I've got all these discounts and it's really affecting my business.
So I'm kind of skipping slightly ahead to leg and retention part of the conversation, cool. But you did just mention, often the most expensive package is the unlimited package. I had a question about unlimited because later on in the report, you talk about package adherence, membership package adherence, right? And at Kilo, we're working on a report that'll make it really easy for gym owners to take a look at this. But I guess what you wrote is if you're selling a 4 times a week membership, but then the person is only going 2 times a week, they're not utilizing that package to its fullest extent. And that's a warning sign, right? That they might drop. And so you should intervene. So I guess, is it a good idea or bad idea to offer unlimited? It's kind of hard to track adherence. At the same time, these are people who are going to probably they're going to use the gym the most and end up paying the least per session. So what's the philosophy on the unlimited membership?
Well, the philosophy is that the more people are in, the more they're going to love the gym and the longer they're going to stay. And I think we all believe that at one time. But what actually pushes people to cancel their membership is this measure of adherence. Are they using what they're paying for? So should a gym offer an unlimited option? Probably not, but it's not terrible if you do. The key is to ask every person, like, are you using that? And if they're not using it, then you need to either get them in more often or drop their membership to the level that they are using. So people, if somebody's paying for 3 times a week membership, 12 times a month, and they're using all of those, they're showing up 11, 12 times a month, they're probably safe. But if they're paying for 15 sessions a month or 16 or unlimited, and they're still only showing up 9 times a month, like, it's your responsibility as a gym owner to get in front of that and either tell the client they're overpaying or get them to come in more. And quite often it's easier just to like downgrade their membership. But if you get in front of them and downgrade their membership to what they're actually using, not only is it like the right thing to do, you'll probably keep them longer. And then hopefully maybe you can talk them into doing more later. I don't think we have to tell horror stories about people who come to your gym 6 times a week. There's no best answer for how many times a week they should be showing up. But there's certainly kind of like a bell curve to outcomes. People that come 3 to 4 times a week seem to get like the best outcomes. People who come more than that either take up valuable time and resources, or they burn out quickly, or whatever. You know, they churn out, they go start their own gym, they get injured, whatever. But what's key is like, are they using the thing they're paying for? You know, it's really like, there are gyms out there who say, I'm only selling unlimited from now on. But that's not a client-centric business. They're making that decision because it's just easier for the owner to process in Zen Planner or whatever. You know, it's not like what the client actually needs. It's like saying, you know, you go to Starbucks and from now on, they only sell one size of coffee. Well, I could drink that much coffee. Not everybody can. And so people are like, well, I only want half that much. You know, why am I paying for this extra grande coffee or whatever it's called when I really just want a small? And they're going to start going somewhere else where they can just get a small. So I think it's really key here that like you're telling people when they're overpaying for the amount of usage they're getting.
Especially if you're targeting Gen Pop. Like, you don't want a mom who's like going from zero conditioning to working out 7 times a week. Like, that's probably not a recipe for a long length of engagement. So what is a length of engagement?
We want to know how long a client stays at your gym. You know, the number one reason is like, if you can keep a client for about 2 years, you can say that you've changed their life. They've adopted the habits, the knowledge, the skills. If somebody leaves your gym after 2 years, they're probably not quitting fitness, even if they're going to go just focus on running or whatever. The second most important thing is that like you're putting a lot of effort into getting people. And if they churn out in under 2 years, well, you know, you're kind of on this marketing flywheel where you're always just chasing the next person. You know, we've spoken with a lot of these gyms that had 300 members back in 2018, you know, and they were really heralded as like the best CrossFit gyms. But you talk to the owner now and they were losing 30 clients a month. They're fighting hard to get 30 more clients in. They're always onboarding brand new people. Like it's just a rat race. And they were totally burned out. They weren't making any money, but they were always being celebrated as like the most successful gyms. Now we know the truth, and it's because reports like this didn't exist back then.
So what's average?
Average leg is 14 months to 24 months. That's a pretty big span, and there's some really important milestones in there. So what we know from tracking this for the last several years is if you can keep a client for 13 months, you're probably going to keep them for about 16 months. And then at that 16-month mark, there's kind of this inflection point where, you know, have they made a good friendship? Have they seen progress? Not just like they're a better time in the Cindy workout. Like, have they actually achieved part of the goal that they came in for? Do they feel like they belong? Do they feel like they're happy when they're there? At the 16-month mark, if you can keep them past that point where a lot of people drop out, you're probably going to keep them to the 2-year point. And what we see here is, you know, gyms fall in one of 3 categories. They bring them in. They can't even keep them for a year. Okay. You've got operational problems. Maybe your bathroom is dirty. That's not your programming. And it's not that you need a level 3. You've got operational problems. If you're keeping people between, you know, 14 months and 24 months, well, maybe you're running things really well operationally, but you're not doing the little extras that make people think like, I'm in a tribe here, or I really, really, really belong. Something's pushing them out still, so that they're still thinking about the price of their membership every month. And, at that level, it's not like people are just moving away. I'm going to bet that if your leg is between 14 and 24 months, you've probably had a mass exodus where a coach has left and taken a bunch of people with them. You've probably had people moving around from gym to gym, whatever, right? They're still not quitting because of the programming. If you're keeping people longer than 24 months, I mean, congratulations, you're doing a great job. The key, though, is that when I ask gym owners, how long do you keep people? Their brain immediately goes to their longest standing member, Jane, who's been there for 7 years. And they're like, yeah, 7 years. 7 years is my average, when really 7 years is, Jane the unicorn. So you really have to look at like, how long do you really keep people? And then you can use that to assess, what do I need to change to keep people around longer and change their lives?
So what puts you in the top 25%?
Anything over 25 months. Like if you're literally keeping people longer than 2 years, like I walk into your gym today, you can reasonably predict that I'll be there in 2 years. You're in the top 25% of gyms worldwide. And I think, this is the metric that a lot of gyms should be aiming for. ARM, client headcount, that'll keep you open. But if you're keeping people for 2 years, you're changing their lives. You're being successful in your mission as a fitness professional. And
so how do people calculate this number if they don't have it in their GMS? Like what is the quick and dirty calculation?
The quick and dirty calculation is you just put every client in a spreadsheet and you write down how many months they've been there. And then you total up all the months and you divide by the number of clients. And that's going to be your leg. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to, draw your leg down if you've got a lot of new clients coming in. Absolutely. A better way is to take, sample cohorts. Like if somebody joined on this date, it's their likelihood of being around is XYZ. And our statisticians and CIO, they're really into measuring that stuff. If you want a quick and dirty, like slapdash approximation, you go 1 over churn. So you have to look at like your monthly churn rate and then do the division of like 1 divided by that churn rate. That should approximate your leg.
So what he's saying is if you have 100 members at the beginning of the month, there's 98 at the end of the month after removing anybody who signed up or churn or anybody who signed up during the month, you have a 2% monthly churn. You lost 2% of your members. So if you divide 1 by 0.02, that'll give you a dirty estimation of your length of engagement. And so in this case, that's going to be around 50 months. So, that would put you probably in the top 1%. Average, I think, is somewhere in the neighborhood, or top 25 is going to be around a 4% monthly churn. So if you have 100 members at the end of the month, 96 will still be around.
If you're thinking about that, if you've got 100 members consistently for a full year, and you're losing 4 a month, that means you're replacing half of your members every year. Like 4% churn is a big deal. People think it looks like a small number, but like a small percentage of a big number is still a big number.
And then that means you're good. That's the top 25%.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's what's scary.
So what do you do to make it better? How do you fix that retention rate, that churn rate?
Well, the number one thing is add an on-ramp. If you don't have an on-ramp program, like your churn is going to be artificially low. You can't just throw people in with the sharks and expect them to swim. So that's the first thing. Like on-ramp is not a barrier to entry. It's a barrier to exit. The second thing that you need to do is have a prescriptive model. So you're meeting with the client at least once a quarter. You're sitting down and saying, are you getting good results? Now, sometimes people will say yes. And at that point, you say, let me make you famous. I want to tell your story. You publish their story. It's like a testimonial. The second thing, if they say, it's going well, I wish the results were a little bit faster. Well, then as a coach, it's your duty to say, here's how I would get you results faster. And, you might feel like that's an upsell, but it's just a prescription. It's just coaching. And then if somebody's like, I don't know, I'm not really using the membership, then you want to put them in kind of like a remedial program where it's your duty to just get them back on track and develop the habits that will change their lives. So that's 2 things, like how you onboard people matters and what you actually do to keep people matters. The third thing is the results that they actually get. People are willing to like defer their results for a long way as long as some of the other stuff falls into place. The fourth thing is the connections that they make. And the fifth thing, this is really important, is like, have they brought somebody else into the gym? So this is a surprise to anybody who hasn't read Joey Coleman's book, Never Lose a Customer Again. But if you think about it, like if you bring your wife into the gym and she loves it, you're staying. And if you tell your boss, hey, this gym is amazing, and they join, like, you're not quitting because you're the one that brought them there, you know? And so like referrals actually have a massive retention benefit, and you should work on like nailing those 5 pillars before you start thinking about committed clubs and belt systems and all that other stuff. Just get those down.
Length of engagement is one metric, but what are these people paying, right? Over the lifetime they're there, right? Because we know people hold, there's ghosts in the system. So what is the lifetime value of an average gym customer?
Well, so now, you know, we're multiplying arm times leg in the typical 2-brain metric, but the Wodify metrics actually reveal something a little bit different. So what they're saying is that in the US, the lifetime value of the average customer is $1,381.55. Now, the cool thing about Wodify data is what they did was they went through each client, anonymously, of course, in all of their gyms, you know, and they said, like, what are these clients all buying? And they added up the price of their service, the price of their retail, like every kill clip is accounted for, divided by how long the average stays. And that gives us a slightly lower number, you know? So it's really, really cool what they've done there. And they've really zeroed in on lifetime value. What this gives us is, number one, you can say like, oh no, that client leaving after 3 months is costing me X, but you can also say the cost of acquisition, if I'm paying $50 to get a client in my door and signed up, like that's easily justified because their lifetime value is $1,381.55.
And then for the top 25%, where does that get us?
Significantly higher. So these people, through a combination of selling a higher value service and keeping people longer, they are about $1,689, so $1,700 per client lifetime value.
Why does that matter, Matteo? Why does having a higher lifetime value matter, especially when it comes to marketing?
Chris already said it, but it gives you more money to spend to acquire that customer. And if you can spend more than the gym down the street to acquire a customer, then you're going to win the game of gym life, gym world, the gym world game. You're
going to conquer the gym world?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you got like an extra 20% there if you're in the top 25%. So
yeah, and that 20% can go to marketing at first. And after a while, when you've got enough clients and you're doing well, that extra 20% can go to coach development or bigger, beautiful space or whatever you want. I mean, it's a virtuous cycle instead of the downward spiral of low pricing where you can't afford to spend anything to get a client and eventually you're just out of business.
So we talked about the marketing cost to acquire a customer and how many leads the average gym is getting and how having a larger lifetime value gives you an edge in marketing. But let's pivot over to sales. So one of the things that matters most in sales is your close rate. And when you ask the average gym owner, hey, you good at sales? They say, yeah, I'm awesome at sales. You get them in the door, I'm going to sell them. And what's your close rate? Well, close rate's 90% once they're in the door. And so, you know, our data shows that that isn't true, that number is actually closer to 70%. And then there's another thing there that I want to bring up before, looking for Chris Cooper's nuggets of wisdom. A lot of people are hesitant to charge more for small group or even offer small group because they say, hey, I'll never be able to sell a membership that's that expensive in my area, right? And so we showed that those gyms get relatively the same amount of leads, but our data actually shows that small group gyms actually close at a higher percentage than other gyms. I have no clue why that would be, Chris. Do you have any insight there?
I would guess that it's the skill of the owner. And also, you know, the people who are brought into small group quite often come from referral. When you launch a big group gym, like when I started CrossFit Catalyst 2008, at first every new person in the door was bringing a friend. This is so great, right? Let me bring you're going to hate this. It's going to kill you. I'm going to laugh. Yeah, you know. But that peters out after a while, especially after the early adopters churn through. With small group, you actually do get a lot more client one-on-one time. And so there's a lot more opportunities to ask for referrals. There's a lot more opportunities to like meet the spouses, the kids, the parents. So you get a lot more warm traffic coming in. That would be like my best guess as to why the close rate for small group is higher. The other thing too that pulls the big group average down, honestly, is that there's a lot of groups that don't use a no sweat intro. It's just come in and try this thing. And of course, the close rate from a free trial is low.
Terry, you pivoted from large group training to small group. Been on the circuit a while. Why?
Yes, yes, correct. Why did I do it? Because I'm getting older and I'm injured everywhere, and I still like working out in a group, but I'm getting a lot more one-on-one attention from my coach. And that's why I switched. And I got my wife to join. So that was a referral that he didn't have to earn.
Amazing.
So there you go. It passes the sniff test, as they say. Chris's theory here.
And when I heard he was doing small group, I tried to get my own small group together. I tried to get Teo and his wife and my wife to train at the same time because I wanted to fill, I thought it would be great. Never materialized, but I can see how I get it. I can see it.
It's such an easy conversation. And I can remember when we were running pretty big groups at Catalyst, I was the owner, so I had every incentive to be warm and welcoming to people. But like I would roll in at the last minute, start my warm up. I'd be kind of in a rush. There'd be like 15, 16 people standing there looking at the whiteboard. There's two people I don't recognize. I'm like, okay, I got to introduce myself to them. With small group, like you really don't have that. And if I bring somebody with me, I can quickly introduce them to the entire group. Like the sale of small group is really not that hard.
And it makes sense why it's higher than one-on-one because I imagine what drives the one-on-one conversions down is price. You're going to be charging more. So you're going to lose some just because it's just too expensive for your prospect coming in. So yeah, it makes sense.
I mean, I don't like giving a client too many options in a row. So I'm sorry, guys, I'm going off topic here, but like what we say after a client does their on-ramp is like, here's the gains that you've made. Do you want to continue in a group setting, or would you be more comfortable doing this one-on-one with me? And if they give a price objection to one-on-one, we'll immediately say, don't worry, we have this semi-private option at Catalyst. And that's our fastest growing segment, even though it's close to 3 times as expensive as our group training.
So let's talk about net client growth. So we talked a little bit about churn and churn rates and how that impacts your length of engagement. There's a lot of noise in the groups on which model is the best model, which one's going to grow the best. What's our data saying?
Well, there's no real difference between models or methods even. You can't say that CrossFit's growing faster than anybody else, certainly. So first off, what's happening is that gyms as a whole are growing better than they have for at least the last 3 years, right? The water is rising and it's lifting all boats. So that's good. How you compare against the industry is really important. And you can't call out like one method or one brand over really anybody else and say that's the fastest growing thing compared to everybody. And it looks like big group right now, you're getting about 5 new clients a month. You're losing about 3. Now, that's not good enough. But what it tells you is that at least these gyms are getting 5 new clients a month. And that means the industry is like making a comeback. The gyms have a ways to go so that they're not losing 3 every month. But the reality is that in most markets, that gaining 5 clients a month is pretty good. It's a good sign. It's a reason to be optimistic.
Hey gym owners, are you looking for a way to generate more leads, close more sales, and increase client retention? Introducing Kilo. We are a software company that gives gym owners the tools they need to increase revenue and run a successful gym. With Kilo, you get a beautifully designed website to capture more leads, an integrated marketing automation platform to increase sales, and our gym management software so you can add new client memberships, process payments, and organize your class schedule. If you're ready to upgrade your gym management software, book a call at usekilo.com.
Okay, so we talked about how we generate revenue, what a member is worth, how long they stick around, the net growth of a gym. Let's talk about money coming out of the gym, expenses. For most gym owners, one of the most substantial expenses they're going to have is their staff expense. So let's talk about what staff expense looks like for an average gym, and then what a top 25% gym should be striving for.
Sure. So an average gym is paying about 33% of their expenses to their staff. Now, this doesn't include the owner. So that means a dollar comes in, 33 cents goes out to your staff that work for you, not the landlord, not the government, not, your bank. That's a good starting point. I think the next number, though, is really dependent on who else is getting paid, or if that's just like a percentage of a big revenue, if you're doing a ton of the work. So if we look at like the gyms that are most successful with this in the big group category, what we'll see is that about 16% of their revenue looks to be going out to their staff. But this can be good or bad. And this is a great example of how one metric alone does not tell you the whole story. So on one hand, maybe the gym is doing a ton of revenue and they're selling services that don't require staff. They're selling cold plunges and retail, and they've got all this stuff going on, and only 16% of their profit, of their revenue, is going out the door to staff again. Okay, they're selling the 24/7 stuff. That paints a bright picture. On the other hand, if you're doing all the coaching yourself and all the cleaning yourself, and you're there from dawn till dusk, and you don't have any staff to really help you, then you're a low percentage of your revenue is going to go to staff. But you have to look at this number, and you have to compare it to net owner benefit, the profit that you're making from the business too, to really get a full picture. And this is where a mentor comes in to say, like, this number looks great. It's coming at the cost of this other thing. I've been to Westside. I've seen what the best deadlifters in the world look like. Their deadlift is coming at the cost of their aerobic fitness and probably their life expectancy. So this number could be a great number. It could be a poor number.
So this is just going to tell you where you are in relation to, the gyms that filled out our survey. We're not saying that if you are a gym doing $24,000 a month, you should target to have 16% of your, you should try and pay your staff less than 16% of revenue. That's not what this says. So, I'm glad we clarified that. Yeah. So we have staff, about a third of revenue is going to staff. Let's talk about the next most expensive thing, or for some gyms, the most expensive thing. That's fixed expenses. So what are we considering a fixed expense?
So this would be your rent. This would be your loan payment. It's the things that recur every single month that you can't change. So your internet bill, your insurance, for example, the rent that you're paying, affiliation fees, those are all fixed expenses.
And so it actually looks like, based off of the survey, that we have, it's
47%.
higher. Yeah. It's higher than staff expense. So 47%.
Yeah.
So are we taking that to mean, so we have 47, 33 in staff expense? Let me pop back here. Let me just dance across the screens here. We take that to mean an average gym is probably running around an 80% margin, not including the owner pay or the owner time, right?
Yeah, and not including those little one-off things that you buy either. So it's pretty easy to wipe out that profit, but we'll come back to that. So if 47% of your expenses are going to fixed expenses, that means that you are starting the work week Monday at 6 a.m. and every dollar you take in or earn until 11 a.m. on like Wednesday is going straight out the door to the landlord, the government, the bank, the insurance company, the payment processor, like all those fixed costs. Okay. That's fairly high. You'll see a smaller percentage for small group, a larger percentage for one-on-one. This varies, but what this also tells you is that, like, if 33% of your revenue is going to staff and 47% is going to your fixed costs, there's only 20%, like 20 cents on the dollar left over to buy the coffee pods that you put in your Keurig machine, to buy that new barbell, and to feed your family. Don't let me forget that.
Yeah, my family likes to eat, so
mine too.
An important thing.
I had a question about this. There was a good chunk of the report talking about like controlling expenses, right, or figuring that stuff out. And something I thought was interesting was you wrote about fancy decorating and things that you deem that might not be that necessary, or things you question in terms of the value of it. John recently said that in reflecting on the gyms we used to own, if he could go back, he would invest more in beautifying the space. Can you two fight about that?
Well, John would beat me in any fight we could dream up, but there's a difference between beautifying the space that you have and taking more space than you need.
Yeah.
So, when I was visiting this chain in New York City, right, years ago, CrossFit HQ sent me to look at this gym and say, like, what is the business model here? And they didn't have a massive square footage, but their rent was unbelievable, like $60,000 a month. And they had this big kind of sitting area in the front, this like lobby with a couple of couches, and there was like a smoothie bar. And I think to this day that if they didn't have that massive nut, which was like, a quarter of their total space, on $60,000, like they're paying $15,000 a month for that. Like, how do you make that up on a 20% profit margin? That's insane. So beautify your space. Yeah. Make people proud to bring their wife there, but don't go overboard and get a whole bunch more space than you need. And don't go overboard with decorating too soon.
And if you're first starting out, like, how do you figure out how much space you need? How do you figure out how to control those fixed expenses?
Well, I mean, it's not as scientific as this guide, but like I always followed Greg Glassman's advice. It's like you start with this tiny thing. And so he started with 400 square feet of rented space in a jiu-jitsu spot. And then, the next space that he had that he controlled was like 800. And then the biggest space he ever had, I think it was about 1,300 square feet. And they had this like, mezzanine up top with like a couple of bikes on it. And his admonishment in the journal was, you don't expand until people are doing burpees on the sidewalk outside. And I really took that to heart. We built a lot of our own equipment in the beginning. My first CrossFit gym was 2,000 square feet, including the bathrooms. And we expanded, but we always kept an eye on the profit margin. Like, am I expanding? Am I buying things to appease my ego that's going to wipe out my family's income? So a lot of people start too big thinking that's what's going to attract clients, or they go too big too fast. And it really is like, you have to be careful. You have to understand how to read a P&L. That said, everybody loves a beautiful gym. You just don't have to be a giant, beautiful gym.
I agree.
No, we can keep going. We got 2 more rows to get through.
All right.
Take the smallest amount of space. You want it to be efficient as possible. And then you want to make it as nice as you can within your budget. So take build the smallest, nicest looking space you can. It's my opinion.
I really think like cleanliness is 80% of that, making it look good, and like if you come into Catalyst, there's a little bit of art, but the barbells are clean. The walls are clean. It smells really good in there. And there's like cool banners hanging down from the walls from the last 10 years of the Intramural Open. Like, that's what decorating is. You don't need a wine bar. I think there was a CrossFit gym that had a whiskey bar or something. You certainly don't need a coffee counter.
Right. It just needs to look, smell nice, be clean. Some of those things will set you apart. And for me, it would be making sure it photographs well. I think a lot of people spend a lot more time looking at reviews and photos and stuff like that, probably than they did 10, 15 years ago when we were building out our gyms.
Yeah. Rickard made this great post last week, and he was like, there was a time when you could walk into any CrossFit gym with your phone out and record an amazing story, right away. And I love that so much. But also, like, if somebody did walk into your gym right now with their phone out, would you be embarrassed or not?
That's the litmus test. That's a good one. We'll leave it there.
That's the metric. Boom.
So let's talk about take home for our average gym here.
Yeah.
What does profit look like if you're an average gym owner? What do you put in the bank?
So there's a big difference between the mean and the median here. I'm just gonna warn you. So the median is $4,000 a month you're taking home if you run a big group gym. Okay. Now this is what your business is paying you. This is how you measure your success as an entrepreneur. Your success as a coach is slightly different. That is like your ability to change people's lives. But this is how you judge, like, did you do the right thing by opening a gym, or should you have gone to work for somebody else? Now, the mean average is $7,300 a month take home, right? $84,000 plus per year. There's a big difference between that mean and the median, because the people who are at the top level are so far past like the average that they pull that mean average up. And there's a few of them out there who actually do that. We actually put their picture in the guide because these people are not just like the top earners, but these are the people who are building the new gyms, who are reinvesting into their coaching, who are expanding their communities and changing the most lives. It's causation. It's not just correlation. They're not successful and profitable because they built the biggest gyms. They are building more gyms because they're successful and profitable. And they'll keep doing that for the next few decades.
And it's important to note that this profit number will come from the survey, and the survey is going to skew more towards two-brain gyms, and two-brain gyms are going to make more than the industry average. So for something like revenue, it's getting pulled from, we're getting some of that information from the gym management providers. So that's going to look at a larger sample set across a bunch of different gyms. But, Kilo, Wodify, we have no clue how much money you actually take home from that. And we have no clue what you pay your staff or what your rent looks like. And so these bottom numbers are going to be more self-reported. And so they're going to skew towards more of a two-brain average. So I would guess, that mean number, if you did it across like Wodify's entire data set, would be a lot closer to what that median number looks like. And I would guess both of them would skew lower. So worth noting.
Yeah, if you go to places like Glassdoor and you look for like average salary of a gym owner, what you'll see is the average salary of a gym owner is about $34,000 a year, and if they own a strength and conditioning gym, it's a little bit higher, $40,000. And then if you look at two brain gyms, what you're seeing is like double and sometimes triple that. And man, I love that because these are the people who are influencing the rest of the entire industry. They're pulling the averages up, and these are the ones who are showing us the path to make this a meaningful and sustainable career.
And so what puts you in the top 25%? What do we say the target is
Anything
there?
over $6,000 take home per month puts you in the top 25%. Now, what's cool is that number keeps going up. So next year when we report, that number will be higher. And so if you're not like earning $1,000 more this year, $1,000 more per month this year than you were last year, there's probably a reason why, right? Like you don't know how to do it, or you're not doing the work that will get you there.
And so the reason I didn't fill in numbers here, guys, just if you're listening along, for staff expense percentage and fixed expense percentage for the top 25%, like we said, you could rank in the top 25% of those categories. But if you're a gym owner who's looking at this spreadsheet being like, these are my targets, it doesn't make sense. Like, you're not going to want to be if you're running a large group coaching gym, you don't want to keep staff pay under 16%. You could do that, but it's not going to, yield the best outcome. The best way to think about it is probably in terms of profitability percentage and work backwards from there. So if we're saying the top 25%, make $6,000 a month and their revenue is $24,000 a month, that means their profitability is roughly 25%. So that means all your other stuff combined, like all your expenses, should be somewhere in the neighborhood of 75%. And so market will dictate what, is great for staff expense percent and fixed expense percent in that area. That's why I left these two blank. But this bottom line and top line number should be your guiding light to see where you rank where you rank amongst your peers. So what you talked about, what impacts that, what was impacting that staff expense number. You can have a very low staff expense number because you coach all the classes and mop the floors and do all that. And that might artificially increase your owner profit number as well. But we have a metric that kind of unearths, how hard are you actually working? Like what is the impact that is having on the business? And that metric is called effective hourly rate. Can you explain what that is and what an average gym owner's effective hourly rate looks like?
Yeah. So if you took the profit that you made from your gym this month, whether that's a salary or a dividend or whatever, like the money that your gym paid you this month, you divided that by the number of hours you work, that will give you an effective hourly rate. Now, this is a useful tool, not because you're going to go ask the boss for a raise, but because you need to know, are you successful as a gym owner? And there are a lot of people out there who they have an effective hourly rate that's less as a gym owner than what they would be making if they worked as a trainer for somebody else. You could be an effective trainer and a horrible gym owner. I was for a decade. And the difference here is like, you need to know what the difference is. It's a different skill set. And so the way that you measure how good you are at actually being a gym owner is if you're earning more than you would as a trainer. So your EHR should be more than you would be paid per hour for your training rate.
And so what's average based off of our survey?
Well, I mean, median is about $25 an hour. It's less than their coaches are making, which is horrible. The mean, which is pulled up by Two Brain Gyms, is about $65 an hour. These people are successful as entrepreneurs, and no surprise, they have a business mentor. I mean, they're going to be successful as an entrepreneur more than they would be as a coach.
And what are the top gyms? Like, if you want to be the top quartile, what are you looking to do there?
About $46 a month. If you were one of the top 25% of gyms, like anything over $46 per hour, should be your EHR. The way that you increase that is you work less or you make more profit, and I would suggest like you focus on making more money for yourself and your family until you reach about 100K. And then that's when you start pivoting to like, okay, let's get some work-life balance. Let's stop working a 60-hour week. Let's improve EHR by reducing time spent.
So if an owner is making 46 as an effective hourly rate and their monthly profit is 6,000, that equates to roughly around 31, 32 hours a week of work is what they're doing.
Not bad.
So you can work that. And so if it's 4,000 and they're making 25 and 25 is their effective hourly rate, that comes out to about a 40-hour work week. So
again, not bad. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we've painted the picture of what an average in a top 25% gym is. Looking at it on the surface, it looks like there are only some, minor things you need to do to get yourself into the right bucket, into okay to healthy. Anything else that's worth noting here? How do you do that if you're in this average bucket now and you want to get to the top 25%? What do you need to do?
EHR? Well,
no,
you need to,
as a gym, we're
everything.
looking at the collective data.
Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to think like, if nothing changes, where am I in 3 years? So if you're red on ARM, you're red on EHR, you're red on client headcount, or any like two of the six big metrics, you're on a downward spiral. And 3 years from now, you're probably not going to be here. You're going to run out of money. You're going to run out of clients. You're going to run out of time, right? Like something is going to happen. And if you're red in those categories, any little thing can have catastrophic effects. I tore my QL deadlifting when my gym was brand new. I had to wear a weight belt just to stand up for a couple of days. Like if that had been any worse, a millimeter bigger, like I would have had to shut my gym down for a week and I would not have been paid. I would have gone out of business. Like if you're in the red for some of these metrics, you are one unforeseen catastrophe away, one big tax bill away, one rent hike away from going out of business. Like you need to look at what happens if nothing changes. If you're in the green on all these things and you look 3 years out, well, you should be able to reasonably expect that you're going to continue to grow because you've got a good ARM. You're keeping clients around. You've obviously got a good marketing pipeline and you're not working yourself to death. So I think, you want to look at like, number one, what is the value of time? The second thing that you want to do after you say like, if nothing changes, what happens to me is you want to say, how can I speed up my growth if I'm going up? And how can I stop my decline if I'm going down? And really, something's got to change. What do you change first? Well, that's what a mentor helps you decide. And that's what we guide you through as part of the Two Brain mentorship program.
And if they want a mentor, where do they go, Chris?
twobrainbusiness.com. You can book a call there with my team. It's free. It's a discovery call. So we're going to see if we're a good fit for you and vice versa. We invite about 40% of people who book those calls to mentorship. If we think that we're a good fit. If you want to get some free guides to help you out first, go to gymownersunited.com. And that's our free group. There's 9,500 gyms in there. Every 3 weeks, it's our standard to get in that group and give you something for free that will help you improve one of these metrics. And if you take these guides and you just do them, you will make more money. You will improve retention. These are valuable things, more valuable than most people charge for. And we just give them away for free every single year. We base those on the metrics that come from this guide. So we know that they work, and the Two Brain clientele is a living proof. Like these gyms are growing 4 times as fast as the average. Some of them are growing 32 times as fast as the industry average. It's because they're following what their mentor tells them, and they're just getting better and better and better at these things. You don't need to learn 300 things to be good in business. You need to learn 5 or 6 things and just focus on getting better and better at those.
And where do people go if they want their own copy of the State of the Industry?
Go to twobrainbusiness.com/data, and you can just have it.
And Teo, where do people go if they want to find us?
You can go to usekilo.com and you can chat to someone on our team. And what's great is if you sign up for Kilo, our gym management software, there's a dashboard that shows you what your average revenue per member is, what your length of engagement is, what your churn is, and what your lifetime value right there, right front and center, first thing you see when you log in. So it's great. You can track some of these metrics to see where you stack up with the other gyms in the state of the industry.
And if you want to be one of those big gyms pulling up the mean average in terms of leads, use Kilo. You know, we can help you get some more leads. That's it.
We sure can.
Go. All right. Well, Chris, thanks for taking the time to do this. I know it takes forever to put the guide together. If you are a CrossFit gym, you're going to receive a abridged version of the guide in your mailbox. And if you are a Two Brain client, you're going to get the full guide. And if you are listening to Gym World, I just showed you how to get a digital copy of the guide at twobrainbusiness.com/data. Go get some knowledge.
Thanks, guys.